everyone. Welcome back or welcome to Laurie's Little Studio. I'm Laurie and today I have this in front of me. I'm going to go ahead and remove the pattern from this bag because of the glare. I'm not going to get rid of it, I'm just going to remove it. Hopefully that'll cut down on some of that glare. So this is not my first folkwear pattern, but it's my first folkwear pattern in probably about 20 plus years. And I am making this one for my oldest daughter, Candace. Back a while, probably before Christmas or right around Christmas, we had, no, wait, longer than that ago. They hadn't even moved up here yet. They were still down in Oregon when she and I talked about sort of freshening up some lingerie that I had made for her a while ago. It was a petticoat and a camisole that just needed, I think I still have them. I've packed them away somewhere, but they just needed a little freshening up. So I was going to, I think at the time the idea was to remove the waistband from the petticoat and kind of fix it. It was obviously that's going to be the area that gets the most stress. So I was going to fix that. And then I think the top needed some adjusting. The straps needed to be moved in a little bit closer on the back. It was just sort of a top with two straps that went over each shoulder. And I went with the Folkwear 203. There are probably other videos on YouTube showing you maybe not how, maybe they just go over the pattern. I'm just gonna have a series on this. So today's video is series 1 in Folkwear 203. In my last video where I made the bag, the Laura Ashley bag, I had mentioned that I was going to purchase a tiny rotary cutter, and here it is. It has arrived. I haven't opened it or used it yet, but I'm probably going to need it for this pattern. Well, I won't need it. I probably wish I had one. So I purchased that, and I also purchased a new package of the Schmetz Microtex 8012. They're kind of my go-to if I'm not real sure what I'm going to be stitching. Most of the fabrics I stitch are cotton or linen. I made a note on here that I put a new needle into my sewing machine, the Bernina 1080 that I call George, on June the 29th of 2023. So that was for that. And now, I guess I'll hang on to this. Now we can get into the pattern that I have purchased. So you might notice there's a pretty interesting design drawing on the front, and almost all of the folkwear patterns will have something similar to this. Some of them are a little bit more modern. Some of them are from a different culture. You might see a whole variety of these drawings, but they're pretty accurate based on what you end up making. So we'll get into that. You will see on the back when you flip the pattern over that you will have kind of a general description, the sizes. This one is extra small to 3 extra large. They give you sizing and yardage requirements and individually called out. So for the camisole, for the petticoat, and for the drawers. They give you suggested fabrics, what type of notions you're going to need or might want, and then a general description of what it is that you'll be making with this pattern. So on the front we're going to see this camisole worn by both models, and then the petticoat, which I will be doing, and the drawers, which I will not be doing this time. We probably are, well, I know for a fact, we're not going to make the petticoat ankle length, but it will look similar to this, just, I think we went with 37 inches. No, from waist to the back of the knee, we went down 26 inches, and that is the finished length that we settled on. And of course, it's really Candace. I'm saying we, I just made the notes. Okay, so this is basically just your outer information that you can see before you buy the pattern. When you get the pattern home and you open it up, now I ordered mine on an Etsy shop, and I will try to remember to link it below. Editing Laurie needs to remember that we're going to link it down below in the description box under the video. Okay, so you open up the video, you open up the pattern, and this is what you see inside. It tells you how to lay out your pattern, and oh, sorry, I keep hitting things overhead. Each one is pretty well detailed. So there we have basically everything. The how-tos. You will also receive for this pattern the how-to of the handmade crochet lace and edges and insertion. Okay. So if you're interested in making the crocheted lace, the insertion, or any of the other trims, this little guide right here that comes in the pattern will be your friend. Now I'm going to zoom in. First I'm going to zoom out, and then I'm going to zoom in, because that's what I do every time. So if you want to see what it is that this is, just this little extra booklet that tells you how to make insertion. Here's the insertion lace for the camisole. In all, if you're going to make the lace and you want whatever it is that you're doing, if you want it to look like this, you will need 6 pieces of insertion lace of varying sizes. And that's their example of what you will be making if you follow all of these instructions. Then there is the beaded lace, and beaded lace is lace that has a hole in it that you can thread ribbon through. And then the double-edged beading right here. So this one would just be simply attached to the fabric along this edge. This one you would need to attach to entre-deux, and then the entre-deux would be what you would attach to the fabric. So this really tells you how to make it, and if you don't want to make it, you want to purchase it, absolutely works just fine. This back here shows you how to do the feather stitch, and that is this 1, 2, I think you can see, I'll point with the pencil. It's right here. This is the feather stitch. So you can do that on a long, wide piece of fabric and attach it to this piece of insertion lace right there. There is a what they call a dust cover underneath what you can see here that we cannot see on this picture. They show it right here. They call that a dust cover. You can either put it there or leave it off. That's the great thing about this pattern. You have options for various and different types of embellishment on the pattern. And then it also shows you how to do the buttonhole stitch right here with instructions. You will need to have 4 buttonholes on the front of that camisole. I believe that the petticoat is either a drawstring or a drawstring and a buttonhole with a button. The drawers are a waistband with a buttonhole. So it is quite possible that we have that on the skirt as well. Right here, I'm gonna have to turn this light off. There we go. Right here is a drawstring. I'm not seeing a buttonhole, so that requires reading. Let me turn this light back on. I ordered 4 glass buttons. They are blue and they should be here any day, again off of an Etsy shop. I hope they arrive soon. And those glass buttons are for the front of the camisole. Nothing else needs to be on display, so I'll probably use mother of pearl buttons if required on the petticoat. All right, so that's what this is. And then as you can see, we have just a massive number of instructions and information. It is, I think, 6 pages, or as they call it, 6 pages. Page 6, yes. So it tells you what to do for every single item. It tells you if you're using eyelet trim, the camisole neckline is finished with an edged eyelet beading and a ribbon drawstring. But you do not have to use that. You can just make a casing, pull a piece of ribbon through and gather it up and just avoid having to do the lace trim. So you can be as basic or as frilly and fancy as you want to be, just carefully following these instructions, reading what they say, because each one, literally each paragraph will tell you this is what you need to do this. But if you're using ready-made eyelet trim on the petticoat and on the drawers, you'll need less fabric. So if you need to do this less fabric or the decreased fabric yardage, it will tell you about that here down below in a little bit more information. So the petticoat dust ruffle and the drawers ruffles can be pre-gathered or flat eyelet. The petticoat flounce is flat eyelet, to which you may add tucking. So as you can see right here, this flounce has tucking to shorten it. You can add as many rows of the tucking as you wish. Okay. Then it also talks about ribbon inserted eyelet beading. Ribbon inserted eyelet beading can also be used instead of seam binding to finish the top of the ruffles and the flounce. So as we go, this right here is lace, and then we have a piece of fabric, and then we have insertion lace, and then we have that long piece of fabric that we've done the feather stitch to, and then right along the bottom there's another bit of lace. So all of that or none of that, it's your choice. You could just make this petticoat, add a little bit of lace right here and call it good. However you want to do that. Okay, then down here we talk about the drawers, which I'm not going to make, so I'm not going to go over that. Then it tells up here, the camisole is finished with lace insertion and beading. And that is all around the neckline and the armholes. The flounce of the petticoat can be embellished with lace insertion with or without tucking. So we've already talked about that. You may want to finish the dust ruffle with narrow lace edging. Finish the ruffles of the drawers with wider lace edging, obviously. So the top edge of the ruffles and the flounce can be covered with ribbon threaded lace beading, other half-inch lace, or plain seam binding, which you can make that yourself. You can decorate the seam binding that you make yourself. You can buy some and decorate it, however you want to do it. And then right here is where it tells you that there's this that you can use for how to make your own. And then it gives you the yardages for the optional lace trims. The petticoat information about the dust ruffle, the flounce, and the insertion is here, as well as some edging. And the drawers information is also available there. And then it tells you, please read this before using your folkwear pattern. fabric preparation and cutting. Pre-shrink all of your fabric and press it. Check the grain of the fabric and straighten it if needed. Okay, and then we continue on page 2. It says permanent press fabrics cannot be straightened. For each garment you wish to make, choose the cutting layout corresponding to the size and the fabric width, and whether or not you are using ready-made ruffling. Pattern pieces which are shaded in the layouts must be placed printed side down. Piece A is shaded, so it goes face down. Anything that is not shaded goes face up. The reason that I make notes on my patterns is because I'm sorry, but once I've read this, there's a lot of reading here. I don't want to have to kind of pick through it to figure out the main points. If I need to know that this is face down, I want to just look at my notes and say, oh, shaded equals face down. Okay, I'm not picking through this and looking for that information. Sometimes it's really hard to see. All right, so this is the cutting layout or guide for the camisole right here, and it's going to be dependent on your fabric. If you have 45-inch wide fabric, sizes extra small to large, this is your layout. And conversely, if you are using 45-inch wide fabric and you need size extra large, this is your layout. And this is for sizes 2X to 2XL to 3XL, right here, where you just open your fabric all the way out and then you cut A like so, and then B you're going to cut and then flip. So you would have your pattern piece on your fabric and then you will flip it. And I suggest tracing. I really think tracing is a good idea. I've decided I'm going to use, I ordered some new art pencils, a kit with erasers and everything, and I'm going to test them on my fabric and see the easiest to remove. Okay, and so we just pull this out of the way and we're going to read about how to do the camisole. And then when we get to the end of page 3, we need to look for page 4. The back side, okay, this is the continuation of page 3 right here. And it's going to tell us how to finish off the back of the camisole and the sleeves and how to put our lace on, and then we're done. Now I noticed when I was reading through this that it shows how to do the insertion, but the finished product is simply ruffles and tucks, which you can also do. Candace and I had considered the idea. I'll get into what we talked about later. So as far as the petticoat goes, here's the end of the camisole and here's the beginning of the petticoat. And that's pretty much what I'm going to need. So this is all of the different cutting layouts for all the different sizes. And they do make a note right here to remind you that shaded like this is the right side of the fabric. So what we're seeing here, these are the seams, and they obviously are the right sides of the fabric. This is the right side of the fabric. This is the wrong side of the fabric, right side of the fabric. So when you see this, that means that you're looking at a seam and that from the inside, the wrong side of the piece. Okay, so we're going to go along with all of this. Flip it over, we're going to keep going. This is how to make the placket, the drawstring waist. This is how to do the dust ruffle. And then it's going to explain about how to apply all these different variations to the flounce at the bottom of the petticoat. All of this right here sort of picks up in this area. Okay, so I don't want to muddy the water too much, so this all continues over here on page 5. Here's basically the end of pretty much the end of it. I think we have a few more informational diagrams and such. If we're going to use flat eyelet, which I could add some flat eyelet, but I have to talk about our fabrics. Okay, so up here at the top, we've sort of decided that we're going to go with kind of a blend between a medium and a large. She's really a medium, but you kind of think about the fact that you're going to be standing up and sitting down and standing up and sitting down, and you don't want that waist to be uncomfortable. So we're kind of building in a little bit of wiggle room just for comfort. We may not need to. Once we get this kind of pinned and basted all together, we'll do a try on. We'll see where we are. I would do a mock-up, but I'm not going to. So in true Laurie fashion, nope, I'm just not going to do it. If I had, honest to goodness, if I had more than about, I don't know, let's see, 45 inches of sewing space by about, I don't know, half that, 20 something inches deep, I might do a little bit more. I don't have a mannequin. I don't have a lot of space, and I just feel like it's easier for me. I do encourage you, if you want to do a mock-up, you have the fabric. You don't have to go buy fabric to do a mock-up. I think that's a bad idea. Just go get a sheet from the Goodwill and use that. You don't have to do a mock-up of the entire thing. If you need to know how the waist is going to fit, then you only have to do like a waist. If you don't know how the camisole is going to fit, then you only have to do the camisole. You don't have to do a mock-up of the whole thing with the lace and the trim and all that. That's not a mock-up. So anyway, we're kind of in the middle between a medium and a large as far as some of these measurements go. So I've written them down here. If I need to go to the store, if I have to leave the house, I don't want to take this with me. So all I'm going to do is use my phone, take a picture of this right here, and probably some of the other bits and pieces of information that I might need, and I'll have it on my phone, which is what I need. This is so much easier for me to use. So you could also pull up, if you could find that on a website for sale, you might be able to get this information. Some people who are selling these will post this, and some people just have a picture of this and with no information. They don't even show you the back. You just get this. So you have to be kind of aware that look for certain things, like something you can look up is Folkwear 203. Just a general Google search. You might find it in a bunch of different places. This pattern will more than likely never deviate from these sizes, extra large or extra small to size 3XL, unless it's being sold used and somebody has already cut it out. In which case, whatever size they cut out is the size that this would be. So that's something else to look for. Okay, now, am I going to trace this pattern? I have not made up my mind about that. I might trace it. I seriously doubt that I'm going to need to do that. I don't think I'm ever going to need to sew it any other size. I don't see myself wearing it, and I don't think my youngest daughter would wear it. The difference being I could adjust the sizes if I needed to. So even cut out at that on those lines. I'm okay with that. Okay, so there's that. And then also what I was going to say earlier, the fabrics that I planned to use originally were white batiste, and this is a petticoat batiste, really soft. I don't have enough of this to do diddly with, and it's no longer available. So I'm going to save this piece of fabric for something else and just order some white cotton batiste for what I need for the petticoat. But this was going to be the camisole. So with this particular piece, I'm going to make the camisole. I think I have enough of this. It doesn't even require a full yard of 60-inch wide, and this is definitely 60 inches wide, and it is a yard. So let's just see. For the camisole, ooh, actually I take that back. We do, 60 inches wide, 7/8 of a yard. So yes, I'm going to make the camisole out of this beautiful blue. I love this color of blue. It's very pale. And I'm going to use white insertion lace and trim. Some of the other things that I will need before I can get started on this particular pattern are sharp scissors, and not just sharp for cutting out the pattern, because I will be using these to cut out the pattern with. Anything paper or plastic, I use these scissors. These are my fabric scissors that I will be using, and they are sharp, and they should be sharp. You want good quality scissors for that. For small sections of fabric that I need to cut, I will be using these. They're also very sharp. You will need a measuring tape or some way to not only measure the body that will be wearing those two items, but you will need that to maybe make some measurements on your fabric. I like using one of these as opposed to one of these because obviously this does not bend. This is very good for, say, making a placket where you just need a rectangle of fabric. Excellent for that. You will need, or wish you had, something like this. And this is for getting around really tight corners and curves and turns in your fabric. This is the smaller this blade, and this is an 18 millimeter, the better. This is for those long cuts. Like again, if you were doing a placket, you're going to need something that can cut a rectangle of fabric if you prefer. Some prefer scissors, some prefer the rotary cutter. So those are some items that you're going to need. You're going to need a way to mark your fabric, and I am hopeful that this new set of pencils that I have ordered will be easy to remove from cotton fabric or lace. I don't like this. It doesn't erase well. It is a washout cloth marker, and washout is subjective. More like scrub out and pray. The other option that you have is Taylor's chalk, and I do like Taylor's chalk. It does erase. I would use the lightest possible that you can get away with. For example, on blue, I would use white, and on white, I would probably use yellow if you have it. This box has lasted me probably 8 years. So glass head pens are really good. I wouldn't leave them in overnight anyway, but at least they won't melt onto your fabric or lace. If you want to follow along with me as I do this pattern in a series of videos, you will need the pattern, which is Folkwear number 203. Okay. You will need to decide what size you want to make, from extra small to 3XL. Extra small is around 30.5 to 31.5 inch bust, 23 to 24 inch waist, 32.5 to 33.5 inch hip, and back waist length is 15.5 to 15 3/4. 3XL is a 52-54 inch bust, 46.5 to 49 inch waist, 54-56 inch hip, and 18.5, 18 3/4 inch back waist length. You need your fabrics You need thread for your sewing machine. You will need 4 buttons for the camisole. You will need 1/2 inch bias tape, and there's the measurements for what you would need of the 1/2 inch bias tape are on the pattern. You need trims for however much you want to trim out the camisole and either of these 2 items. Okay, and then you can measure how long you want the petticoat to be. So you're going to need a measuring tape. You're going to need a marking pen or some chalk. Okay, then you're going to need scissors or rotary cutter that you enjoy using, that you're used to using. I would not recommend introducing something new other than new blades for your rotary cutter. I would not, if you've never used one of these, don't start using it on this project. So let's see, we have laces. We're gonna, whatever it is that we decide we're gonna do as far as trims, if you know how to crochet and you want to do your lace, you'll have to follow how much you're going to need. It says you need a number 10 steel crochet hook and about 875 yards of number 20 crochet cotton. It's going to require 2 balls of DMC, pearl cotton. And then you're going to need to know how to read these. I have no interest in doing it. I know how to crochet, but I prefer to buy the lace and the insertion for the projects. So, but I recommend, if you want to do it, this would be fantastic. And don't forget that there's how to do the buttonhole right here on these instructions. Okay, so I think thread, sharp sewing needles, which I have, cutting implements, lace, those, fabric. Okay. Yeah, I think we're good to go. All right, so I hope that you will come back for Series 2 in the Folkwear pattern, which will be coming up very soon. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. I wanted to give you a little overview of the Folkwear pattern line. It is one of the oldest independent pattern companies. The pattern line is pretty much historical, vintage, some global sewing patterns, and there's often a great deal of cultural history. There's even information about the textiles that would have been used and that you can currently use if you want to try to make it as accurate as possible. There are often little handbooks like our pattern has with the embellishment requirements and how to achieve those. So you get a lot comes packed in these patterns. Oh, as well as a large size range. You can go from an extra small up to a size 3XL. And if you're handy with basically fitting a pattern, you could probably go outside of those 2 measurements somewhat and keep it pretty tight to this. From the beginning, the company was started by 3 women. Their first names were Barbara, Alexandra, and Anne. They started this company in 1976. They were all in California. They all had a love of all things true to the time periods and the cultural requirements that they saw, but they weren't able to find on a traditional sewing pattern or in any kind of sewing pattern company out there. So they created Folkwear. They sold the company in the 1980s. There was a recession. They kind of drifted apart personally and through the business, and they sold it to Taunton Press. And Taunton Press is a publisher that focused on sewing, woodworking, gardening, cooking. So they had it for a while, and then they were ready to sell it. So about 10 years later, they contacted Lark Books, and eventually Lark did decide to go ahead and purchase Folkwear, and they hired Kate Matthews to manage it. So it's back in the hands of a woman. She had owned a shop in the 70s that actually sold the Folkwear patterns, so she was familiar with them. And she kind of hung on to it for a while, and then she was ready to retire, and she kind of started looking around to find someone that she thought would be a good fit. Along came Molly, and Kate said, yes, it's a great fit. Currently, Miss Hamilton is working on the challenge of modernizing these patterns, digitizing, creating PDFs, and also sort of expanding that size range. Not all of the original Folkwear patterns had that extra small to 3XL size range. She's headquartered in Asheville, North Carolina, so Folkwear was moved from California to the East Coast. Personally, I love the opportunity to work with a challenging pattern, and I'm excited to start Folkwear 203 Edwardian Underthings, and I hope that you will join me. Thank you. Bye.